This is the Nearly Enlightened podcast. I am your host, Giana. Today I am joined by Torie of Tea for Torie. She teaches herbalism and mocktail classes. She also is a consulting herbalist and mixologist. She has mood tonics and elixirs as her own herbal line. She's a multi-passionate clinical herbalist, mixologist, yoga instructor, and astrologer, and she teaches people how to bring health into their daily life in a colorful and lighthearted way. Her background in hospitality, infused with wellness, brings a creative approach to enjoying a drink. Hi, Torie. Thank you for coming on. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I am like obsessed with all of your content on social media. I love that you teach mocktail, like creating these amazing mocktails, and you teach them in classes. And you don't have to be, you're in Rhode Island, but you don't have to be from Rhode Island to do them. You teach them virtually. I think that's so awesome. I myself have kind of stepped away from drinking alcoholic beverages. So I love that you can create like these adult drinks that you still feel like you're like enjoying a cocktail without like the repercussions of drinking alcohol.
Yeah, there's a lot out there. I think, in the last maybe 3 or 4 years, it's turned from just going to a bar and maybe getting like a non-alcoholic mojito to like legitimate non-alcoholic wines and spirits and beers, and it's huge. It's really becoming this movement, and like we mentioned earlier before we started, how it's not just for people who necessarily want to quit drinking altogether. Like, you can be anywhere on the spectrum. Some of the people who have started up these brands, whether it's a non-alcoholic bitter company or non-alcoholic wine or spirits, some of them are Mormons. Some of them were pregnant with their children and wanted an alternative. Some of them maybe really went through AA. And some people just wanted to have another toolkit behind the bar where they could have maybe a functional alternative to their favorite spirits to sort of enhance what they already have. Like, you can sometimes mix some of these with a regular alcoholic drink. Like, if you wanted to drink a little bit less, you could do like only one shot of whiskey and then maybe one shot of a functional whiskey that has B vitamins infused into it, into your, Jack and Coke that you normally drink. So you have less of a hangover and there's a little bit of a benefit. So it's sort of a little bit of everything for everyone. And I think at first people get scared because they're like, oh my God, this is people who went through a 12-step program. I'm not sure about that, but it's for everyone in every stage of life, pretty much.
Yeah, for sure. And like for me personally, like I've I'm becoming super sensitive to like basically anything that alters the system. Like I can't have caffeine at all anymore. Like even caffeine in cacao has been like shocking my system. And my parents were here like a little over a month ago, and I had like two mimosas with my mom, and I felt like shit for like 3 days.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna stop. Like I just can't anymore. But I found so here in Arizona, I found like I forgot the brand, but they were like these bitter cocktails that had lavender infused. So lavender will like help you relax, help you sleep. So I was really like loving those before bed. What's
What
your
brand?
go-to? I'm not sure what the brand was, but they were like infused with bitters and lavender, and it was like just a really great, like fizzy, like fun drink.
Right. No, I think it might have been all the bitter actually, but I'm not sure.
So what's your go-to mocktail right now?
So right now, if you like look on my Instagram, you'll see I'll use like usually three products. I try to keep it to three for like my day-to-day use, like other than me creating like something fancier for somebody who wants a mocktail menu. I always use all the bitter cocktail bitters. They're non-alcoholic. And then I'll use like some sort of mixer, like non-alcoholic functional, kind of like a soda alternative. Have you heard of Olipop?
Yes, yeah.
So like stuff like Olipop, I know they're like one of the biggest brands out there. I've found some other smaller brands who have kind of refined it, who use more organic ingredients, which is important to me. So like Wild Wonder is one that I really like. I actually just posted it this morning. They make this guava rose sparkling pre and probiotic organic like bubbly soda, and
Ooh,
it's
that
awesome.
sounds so good.
It's so good. And then
I
I
love the florals, so that like is always intriguing to me.
they're a good brand because they do use a lot of floral notes in theirs. And then Rishi Sparkling Botanicals is another really great brand that I use, and they make all organic herbal based botanical sodas or botanical sparkling drinks. They have like 0 to no sugar in them, and that's sort of something that I try and focus on too, because I like tasting something and having a nice mocktail for the experience, but I also don't want a sugar bomb. So
Yeah.
I try to really focus on low sugar, functional, organic as I possibly can. Um, and then the spirits that I like right now, Three Spirit is my one of my favorites. They're like one of the bigger brands. Um, and then there's a newer one that formulates similarly to Three Spirit. So they're called Drome or Drome. I never know if I pronounce it correctly, but they both Three Spirit and Drome or Drome do sort of more functional non-alcoholic spirits. So they're not trying to taste like a rum or a whiskey or tequila. They're there for like mood lifting and health benefits. And they sort of have their own flavor profile. Like the Three Spirit one that I was drinking this morning is called, I think, the Social Elixir. It has like guava flavor in it and hibiscus, and there's like functional adaptogens and stuff like that in it. And it's kind of like this juicy herbally flavor. Again, it doesn't taste like anything you know, but it's, has herbs in it, and it gives you sort of like an uplifting feeling. And so long story short, my favorite drink right now is that's my formula. I'll do a bitters, I'll do a spirit, and then I'll do a mixer. So that's sort of like the basic of like building an easy cocktail at home. So I'll use one of the bitters, I'll do one of the spirits, and I'll do one of the sodas. The one that I did this morning was the Wild Wonder Guava Rose. And then I did a little bit of Three Spirit Livener, which again has like guava in it. And then I did a couple drops of the New Orleans style All the Bitters, which is sort of like a cherry flavor. And that's like my favorite one right now. I
That
think
sounds so good.
the guava is killer because it's just like juicy. I mean, it literally, I know you're in Arizona, but it snowed yesterday. It was our first snow of the season. So
Oh, that cold.
I
Yeah.
know, I'm like, I want to feel like I want a beach right now. So I'm drinking a guava drink in the middle of winter.
That sounds so good. So for this time of year, I feel like it's really hard for people to balance because there's just so many more social gatherings and um like we just do so much more drinking during the holidays. So how can you kind of like infuse, because when you're infusing these cocktails, you're really getting an herbal dose as well. So like how can you kind of bring that into the season where you feel like you're still having a drink, but you're not drinking?
Right, like sort of how can you feel like uplifted almost? Like how do you
Yeah.
Right, so that's sort of one of the things to kind of dissect when it comes to this non-alcoholic world. It's not just alternatives to your favorite drinks. We have the category that is things that are supposed to mimic what's already out there, like people who are making non-alcoholic rums, non-alcoholic whiskeys, non-alcoholic vermouths. That way you can either replace them completely and have a mocktail, or, like I said, a lot of those brands just are advocating for people who are already drinking to maybe drink less and split it with your regular bourbon or rum or tequila to just have a less strong drink but continue to have the flavor profile. Those drinks I've found, have like caramel 75 in it and some of those unnatural flavoring agents, and I don't necessarily love them. I mean, we all have to pick what our poison is. It's a hell of a lot
Yeah.
better than alcohol. but those don't tend to have any like functional health benefits other than the fact that you're omitting the alcohol. And then we have this category of functional non-alcoholic spirits, and those are the brands that may be making stuff that don't necessarily taste like anything you already know, but they have some sort of benefit, whether they're infused with L-theanine or B vitamins, or it's more of a mix of, you know, different herbs that help you feel lifted or more relaxed and down regulated. Some of those brands that you could like feel something with would be Three Spirit, Kin, I would say Drome. Again, I'm sorry if I'm butchering the name of it. I don't know. I'm sorry, guys. I should have checked this before I came out and talked about it. But anyway, all of them use herbs and they have like calming or uplifting effects. Those are really great ones that I would choose if I wanted to like sort of, I don't want to say conjure, but like evoke a feeling without alcohol. Again, sometimes those can be triggering to people who are like trying to be super sober, who don't want to feel anything. And also, those are contraindicated for people who are on medication or are pregnant and breastfeeding.
Oh, so interesting.
So you have to be careful and you have to know kind of what's going on. And that's been part of the challenge with this because I have a background in clinical herbalism. I also started my career working for a company called Seventh Generation, and I'm very thorough about reading labels and hyper aware of what ingredients are. And so I get a little bit upset when I'm seeing people formulate stuff. And again, I know it's better than drinking alcohol, but I'm like, dude, are you guys even using a therapeutic dose of this? Like, I've asked people to issue via COI, which is called a certificate of analysis. And that will tell you how much like is in how much of what herb is in there. So like legally they're supposed to provide it. It's not like asking for the secret sauce and what's in your recipe. It's like, I want to know like if there's a therapeutic dose of ashwagandha in this, or you're just blowing smoke up my ass because you want to make money marketing, and you know that using the word adaptogen and nootropic is like a hot word right now.
Yeah, for sure.
And you're using a minute amount. And I know this because of my background. Most people aren't going to know this. Like, you know.
Yeah, I would fall prey to that. Totally. I would see like ashwagandha adaptogen. I'd be like, okay, cool.
Right. And I'm in this position where I'm like, I'm proud that this is becoming an industry and excited about it, but I'm also like, guys, we're doing the same freaking thing that everyone else is doing. Like, have accountability. It's called like informed consent too, because not for nothing, people are taking some of these herbs and like, if you're not using organic herbs, are they contaminated with heavy metals and pesticides? Like, when are we going to stop? Period. Like, it just needs to stop.
Yeah, you're speaking my language now. We could go down a whole rabbit hole.
Right. And I like I said, we can't be perfect, and I don't think we need to make ourselves sick about being perfect, and you know, we're never going to be completely clean of everything all the time, but I just want more brands to start from the beginning and have a better foundation and have a better set of like moral and ethics, and
Yeah.
just like go into it and like be informed. And I understand that a lot of these brands have really good intentions, and they just don't know, and sometimes it's just people trying to make money. And
Yeah.
you know, at the end of the day, we're sort of like illiterate when it comes to herbalism. Like, people are getting attracted to those you know, hot words like adaptogens and nootropics, or like some brands are just like making up their own names like euphorics. That's not an herbal action. That's, they made that up and trademarked it. Like, herbs have action. So just a quick herbs 101. Every herb has its primary purpose, and then it has a lot of like secondary purposes. So herbs can be used for multiple things. We can talk about something like burdock root, which is a great anti-diabetic. It's great for glucose regulation, so helping with the blood sugar, but it's also great for the liver. And those two actions, if you were to like give it a name, And an action is like what it does. It's like what its function is. We would call that a hepatic and a glucose regulator technically. And then, when we look at like what they're doing in these herb infused mocktails and everything, they're trademarking and trying to use that same concept of like the function of the herbs, the actions of the herbs, like nootropics, like adaptogens, and they're making shit up and they're trademarking it. And I'm like, no, that's not how this works. What are we doing?
And really, if you're not working with a health professional like an herbalist, like you're probably not getting the doses that's necessary to get those effects.
Right. So it's the placebo effect. Like at the end of the day, people are like, okay, cool, there's nootropics in here. This is awesome. And sometimes they can get away with putting in an insignificant amount of it. And other times, some of the other brands, they're just making a cocktail of supplements that gets you jacked up. Like some of them that I've tried have given me heart palpitations because I'm like wicked sensitive like you, like painfully body sensitive. Even more so now, like obviously I don't drink alcohol, but like I also just can't even like cacao. I'm super sensitive to. Can't do coffee. Like
Same. Oh my God. Yeah. And cacao has been a huge part of my journey. So now to like if I have like a little bit, I'm fine. But if I have like any more than like 4 ounces, like I'm not well.
Yeah, me neither. I'm like, someone has to peel me off the ceiling, and I just like like so anxious. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of went off on a tangent there because I just feel like I'm.
That's okay. We love that here at the Nearly Enlightened podcast. That's like what we're for.
But yeah, I mean, look, it's a great industry and I'm proud of it. But like, I also want to help kind of lead the way in helping to help brands, be more intentional about their formulations and actually use therapeutic doses and use organic herbs and be able to post your COA on your website, which legally anybody can have access to, and be proud of how your product tests. Be proud that you're low in heavy metals and mold. And if you're not, like, make a commitment out there to inform your customers and let them know you're working on it. Educate them, don't just like put something out, hide everything, and like secretly have something that's just like a little toxic soup, in a bottle.
Yeah, I think that's why it's so important to be an informed consumer. And like, that's what I'm really passionate about. Like, I will spend far too much time at the grocery store where like I'm literally Googling who owns the actual company. Like I was using Epic for a long time, and I'll use this as a good example. Like it comes off as a small business, like family farms, and it was at one point, but General Mills owns it now. So it's like, how good of a company is it anymore? And even like Primal Kitchen, which I love and I still use from time to time, is owned by Heinz.
Yeah.
So it's like just knowing, like being an informed consumer, like the stuff we're putting in our bodies, like it impacts our overall health. So like knowing what's actually in these products is pretty important.
Yeah, that's the important part of it. Like everybody at the end of the day, like here's the thing, like if you're going to make a brand, if you're going to have a product, pretty much everyone's end goal is to sell out to a big company. That's what people obviously do it because they love it, but 95% of people are hoping to get big enough to sell out. That's just how it works, and it sucks. And I thought having a monopoly was illegal, but apparently not. That's what we learned on the board game. Like, you're not supposed to do it. Like, having, owning that much of anything, whether it's craft or General Mills or whatever, like, not okay. And then we have no trust for anybody.
Yep. And the integrity of the product, you lose that because these big companies, they're just worried about their bottom line. So it is very interesting. And like I talk about with Katie on the podcast previous to this, is like having a healthy, like 80-20 rule or whatever your rule is, knowing that like you're never going to cut out everything. And just like kind of having grace for yourself and for the world around us.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. It's a tough thing to navigate. But there's a lot of really cool stuff happening.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely a shift coming. And I think we're going to see it in our lifetime, which is pretty exciting.
No, I hope so. I'm like ready to tap into some telepathic communication or whatever's on the horizon.
Same, same. So what kind of like inspired this journey for you?
So honestly, this kind of just like all slowly happened over time. Like to get where I am right now, like I said, I started in the corporate world. I worked for seventh generation, and I just got really depressed sitting behind a desk. I honestly don't think that most humans should be able to do that. Like we need to be moving around, we need to be walking and communing with people, and it's been shown time and time again how a sedentary lifestyle is going to kill us. And not for nothing that like we as in you and I and generations who have come after us at this point are not projected to live beyond our grandparents because of primarily that kind of a lifestyle. It's really not good, and I felt it immediately. I was like, whoa, super depressed. My soul was just screaming at me like there's got to be a better way, and I was really health focused. I actually was in marketing and business, and I remember one day when I was communicating with somebody in the basement who was actually an herbalist, and she was helping to formulate for the brand, and I was like, oh my god, this is literally the coolest thing. I have to do this or figure out like I want to do that. And so basically, long story short, I quit my job and I moved to Australia, which sounds very dramatic.
Whoa, that's pretty cool. My boyfriend lived there for a little while.
Yeah, they have this thing. They have this exchange called the working holiday visa. And that's how I was able to do it. So if you're between the ages of 18 and 30, you can go live and work out there without having any prearrangements. So like traditionally if you wanted to live somewhere outside of the US and you're a US citizen, you'd have to like have a visa and a contract with a company for a minimum amount of time, and it's kind of a pain in the ass to figure out, and you have to shop around. This visa just lets you kind of show up, and then people will like hire you. You can only work for somebody for like a minimum of 6 months though. That's part of the deal. um and so I went over there, and I went there specifically because they are kind of the leaders, or at the time were like leading in holistic health. Like they have more of a centralized healthcare system. They have, acupuncture and, herbal medicine is covered by insurance and stuff like that. And so I was like, I want to see how this works. And I lived over there for a year. I worked for a small tea company for a little while. I worked for a superfoods company, which got me even deeper down the rabbit hole of like the production line and the manufacturing line. They made like, cacao powder and maca powder and coconut oil. And one of the things I learned from her, which again got me to be this like insane person who reads the backs of all labels, was she was talking about how they were shipping in these drums of coconut oil from Indonesia or whatever, and how expensive it is to get raw coconut oil because you have to get it in like these specific style of drums, so to preserve, like, so it doesn't go above a certain like temperature. And how basically something to the effect of, there were other people who were also shipping the same coconut oil, but not in the protective barrels, who were still labeling it as like raw version coconut oil, when at that point it was no longer, because it was on these hot ships in the bottom near a boiler and getting heated to who knows what levels. And,
In
this,
probably plastic drums.
right, and probably plastic drums and that sort of a thing. But I was just like, oh my God, how many like rabbit holes am I going to go down? Like at this point, you just learn over time. I mean, I started, I think, early. But from there, I backpacked Southeast Asia, and I was like, I want to learn more. And there's like crazy little herb shops there that are in the middle of nowhere that have like jars of stuff that look like, you can't tell if it's alive or not. Like it's weird. You know what I mean? They have like ginseng in this like, jar, and it looks like it's moving. And I studied yoga there. And I came back to the US and I was like, I like want to figure out how to heal people or teach people about these ancient remedies, but make it cool and fun. And so I studied herbalism on the side. I've always been in hospitality, especially after I quit my corporate job. I've been in it, I guess, at this point, it's been 15 years. I sort of just consult now. I'm not bartending or anything, but yeah, I got to this point where I was like, I'm going to just mash up everything that I do. So I started teaching these herbal infused mocktail and cocktail classes back in like 2015 or 16. And I started doing it behind the bar that I worked at. And I started infusing things and making herbal infused drinks. And eventually I moved around. I went to California for a while. And then the pandemic happened. And when that happened, I pretty much just put everything that I did in person online. So I started teaching this herbal mocktail and cocktail class, and it got really popular. And I started getting corporate interest, and people were hiring me to do virtual corporate classes for bigger companies who, have multiple offices and do something that was interactive and also health focused. And then I sort of got to this place where I, for a long time, really didn't want to work with alcohol anymore. Like, I didn't want to do it. It didn't feel aligned with me. Like, I have a very all or nothing attitude with alcohol. I have a hard time being like, oh yeah, I'll just have a glass. No, I want to go all the way. I like,
Yeah.
that's how my personality is. And some people aren't like that. And I understand that. And that's fine. And I was just, not drinking all the time when I decided to quit. I just like had a friend come visit me and we like had a good time or whatever, but I was super hungover the next day and I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to reach my highest potential if I don't get rid of this. And even if I'm not like necessarily at the stage where I'm abusing it, and I'm not saying that I haven't abused it in the past, I absolutely have. I have used
I
alcohol.
think anyone in their 20s who's ever been like a college student or like, yeah, we all have.
I've abused it for sure as a social lubricant for
Yep.
anxiety. I've used it, as an emotional crutch and in
It
not healthy ways.
it's interesting when you start to look at these uncomfortable truths and like the more you uncover and like, okay, am I using this as a buffer to like ease my anxiety and just make me feel a little bit more social? I know for
Right.
me, that's like how I get pulled in too. It's like, oh, well, everyone else is drinking and like, so I might as well drink too.
Right. Right. It's one of those like almost sheep mentalities. It's like when you see other people doing it, it's wicked hard not to do it because then you're standing out. And even if it's not standing out in like the most obvious way, you're still sort of being isolated. And as humans, we're programmed to not want to feel like that. We want to be part of the group. It's a survival mechanism to feel part of the group. So most people are always going to cave to it. And until it shifts, which I think it's starting to, um, you know, it's really hard to not use it for like, I think stress relief is one of the biggest ones. Like people are like, oh, I had a stressful day. I need this. And it's not really doing your body a lot of favors. And like I said, I'm not like 1,000% against alcohol. I think it should be used as medicine. And I think it can be used to lift your spirits. I like the idea of people using it to celebrate on rare occasions. I don't think it has great health benefits at all whatsoever. Like, I think it needs to be used minimally. And how it was used traditionally was to extract herbs for therapeutic purposes. Like, if you think about cocktail culture, right? Before we started drinking to get like drink our problems away and everything, we were drinking for health purposes. So things like whether it's limoncello that has, or like something like an orange liqueur, like those two use the bitter peels of citrus fruit to take to help with digestion. Or we're talking about amaro or absinthe, again, they're using herbs that will help you to expel gas or helping with to ease the stomach after a meal. Every culture has a different version. Like absinthe is sort of like Dutch, or we can think about in Greece, there's ouzo. Again, that's a very like anise flavored
Yeah, I've had it before.
yeah, so everyone has a little bit of something different, and like that was used to take like after a meal, and you just have like a shot of it, and that's it, and we call it a day. And in herbalism right now, we extract herbal medicine via tinctures and alcohol, and we're taking little baby doses of it. I mean, you know, we're not taking shots of it, but like it was used therapeutically. So I'm really of the mind of like the poison is in the dose, and we can see this in anything else too. You can see this in drugs, you can see this in marijuana, you can see this in cocaine, you can see this in heroin. Heroin comes from California poppy. California poppy is a variety, but it comes from the poppy plant, and that's a really, really nice nervine and pain reliever. And when you extract certain chemicals of it and concentrate it in a lab, you're looking at heroin.
Well, that's
Or
the thing. It's like all of modern medicine is all derived from herbs. And like, I think that's something that people fail to realize is like, they just took herb properties and synthetically created them in a lab so that they could patent them because nature can't be patented.
100%. That's 100% what it is. And once we started to like mechanize or like inject technology into plant medicine, I mean that was the downfall. That's where cocaine came from. That's where heroin came from. Coca leaves people chew when they're like on a hike up a mountain, and it gives them energy. But if you concentrate that and you're using lab equipment, you have cocaine. Like that's where it got wrong, and you have to isolate the compounds. Or like, you know, with pretty much every herb there is, like, I mean, you can talk about one of the like most expensive cancer drugs for, I think, leukemia comes from Madagascar periwinkle. And basically they've extracted the chemical compound from this variety of periwinkle and then put it into whatever form it is. I don't know if it's a pill or some sort of intravenous IV solution. I'm not really sure, but that stuff is astronomically expensive because they've like patented it. And they're even doing that in the supplement world now. I've seen it where they're like, oh, we have you know, I don't even know how to like describe it, but basically what they do is they're doing that same thing where they're extracting one of the beneficial properties of an herb. So for example, I'll just make up something random, but vanilla has this chemical in it called vanillin, which is actually really great for like relaxation in the nervous system and stuff like that. They'll patent vanillin and put a trademark thing next to it and say that that's in their blend of supplements along with like magnesium and L-theanine and whatever, and this is great for brain health and relaxation. So instead of using that vanilla, they're again trademarking a chemical in the vanilla, and they're putting it in other supplements. So it's going beyond just pharmaceuticals now. It's going into the supplement world. So supplements now are trying to trademark chemicals in plants as well, which I hate, and it makes me so mad. And I'm like, you guys are doing the same thing. Stop.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it's kind of like, so I recently, well, not that recently anymore, but I was plant-based for 6 years, almost 7 years, and recently started eating meat again. And I got a lot of hate from the plant-based community where they're like, "Oh, you can use supplements and supplement your way out of this." And it's like, "Okay, but I don't want to live on supplements because at this point we have big pharma and like now we have big supplement." And it's like kind of the same thing. And you can't always trust what's in the supplements. And these companies are not transparent. So, like, for me, it just doesn't make sense when you can get what you need from whole foods. And I think that herbs are in that whole foods category.
yeah, yeah, you can use herbs as food as well. It's a crazy situation. It's like, you know, honestly, we kind of really have to just get super hyper local and, try to find other ways to be financially savvy. Like, you have to be financially savvy. Being able to provide for a family and have a salary or have income enough to live, unfortunately, has to be separate from how you provide to a community or how you might, I don't know, live out your dharma, maybe, perhaps, whatever you want to call it. Like, we're sort of in this position where our hands are tied behind our backs and we sort of have to play the system. And so if people can figure out a way to be financially savvy, to figure out how to use whatever their best skill sets are to kind of be financially stable in order to be able to kind of provide for the communities. Like, I don't really know how else to do it. This is something that I'm problem solving in my head all the time, because if I just threw everything away right now and was like, all I'm going to do is teach cocktail classes on a small scale, I won't be able to eat. And it's tough. It's like, unless you're hustling or like an Instagram influencer or have figured out a way to sell a bunch of stuff on Etsy, it's really hard to be a solo entrepreneurial person doing what you love. It's not impossible. I'm still trying to like work my way through it, and I feel like I'm on the edge of it, but it's hard.
I totally feel you. Yeah, as someone who is kind of doing the same and had the same experience where like I'm also a massage therapist. So in 2020, like couldn't do that anymore. So it was like, now what? And like, you're living on unemployment for a little and you're just like, there's got to be something better than this. There's got to be something more than this. And that's when my friend Jamie, the soulpreneur coach, was kind of like, okay, well, you have all these skill sets, so just like start putting it out there. And that was like a really scary transition time. And I feel like I'm still like I feel similarly to you, where like I feel like I'm on the precipice of something where like it's really starting to gain momentum, but it's really hard to make that leap.
Yeah. You have to have blind faith.
Yeah.
Yourself. That's it. It's hard. It's wicked hard to have that. And you have to do whatever it is that you love to do. You have to do it no matter what. Like, and believe in yourself and know that you're going to fail 1,000 times and maybe succeed once or twice. Like, that's how it works. And I think that's what ends up separating the people who like make it doing what they love and people who end up just putting it on the side as a side hobby. Is you cannot ever give up. And if you believe in your heart truly that like what it is that you really want is like your destiny, that you have to go for it. But you also have to be able to distinct between what is your heart's desire and what do you feel like you're here to do and what's your ego. So if you want to be famous and rich and blah blah blah, and that's what you really feel like you want to be, it's like, do you really want to be rich and famous? Do you know what I mean? It's like you have to be super super clear.
Yeah.
And not let your ego get in the way.
And I feel like for those of us who are in the healing space, it really is about like, we're seeing all of these systems around us starting to fail, like big pharma, big food, like people are starting to wake up to the nefarious energy around those businesses or those monopolies, like you said, they are. And when you're in this healing space, like you really have to want to serve the community. And I think you touched on that too.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is. Like, we're bringing education. For me, it's more like yoga focused, where it's like breath work, meditation, movement. That's the education that I'm bringing. And for you, it's herbalism and like a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely it takes time. I think there's a lot of healers and there's like so many more people who are trying to share this stuff with their community, and there's a way to like turn that into something bigger and, you know, help heal people beyond your community. Again, I'm still figuring it out. I feel like I'm on the cusp of it. So like I said, I put all my stuff online. I started getting corporate interest. I started teaching these corporate classes for like global companies, and it was really awesome and cool. And then right now, my current project is I've turned into more of a consultant where I have a non-alcoholic bar down in North Carolina who contracted me to create their mocktail menu. They're opening up a completely non-alcoholic space.
I think that is so awesome that places like this are starting to pop up.
Yeah, it's going to be super cool. I'm like putting my heart and soul into this project. It's going to be potentially having a non-alcoholic liquor store next door.
Whoa.
Products, and it's called Umbrella Dry Bar in North Carolina. And so through that project, then more stuff just started blowing up for me. I started getting other people interested in potentially having me help them to formulate products. I've actually had somebody here reach out to me who has a space to do more pop-ups and events and potentially curate a non-alcoholic liquor section in their liquor store. So
whoa, that is so cool.
it's like just starting to like go, and I'm doing what I love, and I want it to help people, and I want to spread, you know, this idea of health to people. And because I think it's coming from a good place and good intentions, like it's working. And I've failed so many times. There's so many workshops that I've taught that like either nobody showed up to, or like 2 or 3 people showed up to, or this job didn't work out, or I thought this was going to happen and then that didn't. And you just fall flat on your ass 1,000 times, and then you start to like get a little success, and then you don't for a while, and then you get success, and then you don't for a while. But then you get to this point where like the success becomes more frequent, and I'm just starting to get in that stage right now, and I'm like, oh my god, we're here. Like I'm 2 inches away from breaking the glass ceiling. Like that's it. Like you told the universe 1,000 times over, I'm going to do this no matter what. Like it will repay you. I firmly believe you just have to keep going.
I love that message. And I think that's so pertinent, not just for like a journey like yours where you're trying to find yourself in a career space, but like I think that it kind of speaks to the whole healing journey. Like it's like I talk about it on one of my first episodes. Like the healing journey can be kind of lonely and it can be hard, especially in the beginning. But if you keep going, the reward is so worth those uncomfortable feelings.
Yeah, you definitely, if you do the work, you will be repaid basically. Whether that's like working hard on something like a job or working through your emotional stuff. And not for nothing, I think that's a huge part of also why I've been able to finally start to have success is like I've been working so much on doing my own healing for the past like 4 years or so. And that goes hand in hand. I think if you're carrying emotional stuff from the past, it's going to be a lot harder to succeed. That's like one of the formulas for success. Like I firmly believe if you're not dealing with your shit, it's going to be harder to get somewhere. You're carrying baggage essentially.
Yeah, for sure. And that gets so heavy after a while. Like you can't juggle it all.
Yeah. And and I know you mentioned before like what I don't know that I asked you this before, but like in your healing journey, like do you feel like did you go through some sort of healing or event that maybe brought you to your knees to get you to this place to sort of realize what your purpose is? Or did you always feel like, I know what my purpose is, this is my purpose?
So it's been like a little bit of both. So when I was really young, I've had a lot of spiritual instances where like I was talking to dead ancestors and I had deities appear to me in vision. Like this is all before I was like 2.5 years old. So it's like before all of the social programming. And I had a really good support system in my mom and my grandmother who was like, you're not weird. Like, this is a gift. And then as I got older and like you meet your peers and it's like, oh, I can't talk about that stuff because, you know, they're playing with Barbies and like whatever it is, like I will be the fucking weirdo. And like you said, like you're just trying to, like we have this innate like group mentality, like where it's like, oh, like I have to shut that down completely, like because that won't be accepted. So it's been a back and forth of like knowing that I am here to do this work and then also like being led astray and then being brought to my knees to kind of like come back. Like I've had a few my brother passed away when I was 8. He had addiction problems and eventually passed away from that. So I think that that helped to like layer the journey a little. Like it was one of those moments that brought me down to my knees and like kind of question, like, is there a God? Is there a purpose to all of this? Like kind of made me angry, but also like deepened the practice too for me. And then, you know, becoming a teenager, like I just wanted to, yeah, like I just wanted to be a rebel and like I just shunned everything away and just like went completely the opposite way. Like fell into like drinking, partying, and I feel like it was a way to numb all of the spiritual gifts that I've had my whole life. That can be kind of scary, especially when you're in these transition parts of your life and like, you know, you're not really a teenager anymore, you're not really an adult yet. And like, so that was like alcohol was a big numbing agent for me through those years. And then I had another experience of being in a very abusive and toxic relationship. And it took me so long to get out of that relationship. And after that, I just knew like I have pushed away my purpose for so long. And like I'm here to help serve and to help guide people. And like I'm not special, right? Like I think this is like a wildly unpopular opinion, but like I can't fucking stand when people are like, oh, well, I'm empathic. It's like literally every single person on this planet is empathic. It's just like, are you tapped into it? Like, it doesn't make you special or like anything else. Like, it just means that you're like a little bit more aware, maybe. But I feel like every single person on this planet has these spiritual gifts, but we've all been led astray to kind of distance ourselves from that, because if we were all close to that and we all knew what spiritually powerful beings we were, like the planet wouldn't look like this, like what it does right now. So that, I mean, that's why Nearly Enlightened was born. I like couldn't stand the spiritual bypassing in the spiritual community or world. Like I couldn't handle the messages that were being put out. So I was like, I'm going to do this. Like it was finally like my way of stepping up and being like, okay, let's put truth out there. I didn't want the platform to just be me. Like I think the grossest, most like ick feeling I get is when spiritual teachers, I'll say it in air quotes, put themselves up on pedestals like they're someone special. And it's like, you're not. Like maybe you just leaned into your purpose a little, like, but we're not here. Like you said, you have to take the ego out of it. Like we're not here to be like famous influencers. Like, I don't know. Like we're here to serve a community. We're here to serve a higher purpose. And I wanted to give people the tools to tap into that for themselves. Like I never wanted it to be about me. And I wanted to give a platform to other people who are doing really awesome work. So if you like look back on past guests, like I've had people who do human design on here, Reiki. Like, it's funny because like 9 out of 10 people, their journey started with becoming a yoga teacher.
Me too. I didn't mention that, but
it's like, it really is the gateway. Like, even for me coming back into the spiritual world, like asana was the first thing that I practiced, the postures, the poses. That's like what got me in. And then when I was learning more about like breath work and meditation and healthy mindset, like those things were kind of like what led me in. And I was like, okay, this is what I need to teach to everyone, anyone who will listen, anyone who wants this information. Like, this is what I'm here to put out. And going back to like when I was younger and knowing I was a spiritual person, I grew up Catholic, went to Catholic school my entire life, like literally first grade through 12th grade. In Rhode Island. Yep.
Yeah, it's hardcore.
Yeah. And
I know all my friends, I was like, at everybody's communion or whatever it's called, not communion, what's it called?
Confirmation.
Yeah. I didn't get confirmed, and I remember some parents being like, you should ask your mom about getting confirmation. And I'm like, should I? I don't really know. I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
It's like heavily, influenced in our area.
Yeah. And I come from like, my dad is from Italy. So like I come from an old school Italian background. And what I've come to learn now is they were actually more spiritual than they were Catholic, but there was like this pressure of like raising your kids Catholic. But I always remember like some of my youngest memories, I remember being pissed that women couldn't be priests. And I was like, that's fucking bullshit. Like I just was so mad about that because I felt like in my little mind, like that was the only way to be a spiritual leader, right?
Right.
Was to become a priest. And like, did I want to become a priest? Like, absolutely not. But did I want that platform where like I was talking about the connection to God? Like, yes. And so now I feel like my journey has been, how can I, first of all, feel comfortable? Like I spent so much time not talking about God and using other words to describe God, energy, universe, spirit. And it's like, I was really just talking about the relationship with God. And is that a taboo thing? Does, not all people believe in that creator energy, and that's fine. But my ebb and flow has really become being in deeper relationship with that God energy, because I don't believe it's a person or a thing. It's an energy.
Right.
So yeah, that's just like a little tangent about my ebb and flow through my spiritual journey. But yeah, like I knew that there was something more as well. And I never had that desk job. I was in the retail space for a really long time. And my family has a family business that's been in the family for like probably close to 40 years now. And then they're in the fashion industry. So like, I just thought that that was going to be what I was going to do. And the universe God had other plans when my family said, no, you're not allowed to come into the family business.
Wait, what's your sun, moon, and rising? You're Gemini sun, right?
Gemini sun, Cancer moon, Sagittarius rising. Okay. So I've got like some interesting energy. I also have like 5 planets in Leo.
Okay. I was thinking about you because I also not obviously, but I feel like a lot of us in this space have like 18 trades. It's like,
oh yeah,
and astrology and Reiki and blah blah blah.
We love the slashes.
Like, right.
And this slash this.
Right, because I'm like your voice, like you want to use your voice so badly, right? So I'm like that Gemini or like the Leo plays a huge role in that.
Yeah, so Venus and Mars both in Leo, which probably also speaks to like my party days.
It could, but you also have the Sagittarius is also, that's your moon sign, right?
Or no, rising. Moon is Cancer, so very interesting dynamic. I have like no Earth placements. I think I have one Oh, my north node is in Capricorn. That's the only earth sign that I have in my whole chart.
And that's in what sign in your birth chart?
That's my north node. So I guess it's like not even really.
So if it's Capricorn, that means it's in the second house.
Yeah, all of my my entire chart. I should send it to you. It's kind of interesting, but my entire chart, everything is in the second and eighth house. I have
That's where all your
nothing anywhere.
psychic stuff comes from, because the eighth house has to do with basically other realms. So yeah, all the psychic, and not for nothing, most people who have a Cancer moon. So when you have a moon, when your moon is in a water sign, you're more likely to be psychically sensitive. But also eighth house placements, 12th house placements, all those deal with like other realms, the dream realm, or just the astral plane in general. Do you use like, are you tapping into that when you do your work now, or how do you infuse that into what you do? Like, do you do healings with people, or
I don't, well, I shouldn't say that. I do one-on-one healings with people in person, because I do have the massage therapy background. So I do a form of body work that like isn't out there yet. But it basically encompasses everything, a little energy work, a little body work, a little like whatever comes through. And some people are open to it and some people aren't, and that's fine. But my main thing is I teach people how to meditate through like a very traditional like yoga sutras, like withdrawing of the senses. And I am in the midst of launching like 4 courses that will be out hopefully by the first of the year, that just help people go deeper into more self-study. Like that was a very important part of my yogic journey was, and that's what I've always been doing. I would describe myself as a seeker. Like I was always trying to find that deeper meaning to literally everything.
yeah.
And the Gemini, that's like
Hard
the
to do
Gemini.
that when you're young, though. I'll say that much. I did the same thing, and I was like, "Why this? Why that?"
Well, it like creates a energy of like depression and anxiety, and it definitely like wasn't easy. The first time I ever had a panic attack, I was between the ages of like 8 and 10, and like debilitating panic attack where like I ended up in the hospital on oxygen, and the doctor was like, okay, this kid is just stressed out to the max. And coming from an old school Italian background and like a privileged upbringing, they were like, parents of the 90s were kind of like, okay, kid, get it together. Like,
Yeah,
enough.
same thing with me, dude. Same thing. Super anxious little kid, super hyper aware, probably almost too aware. And I
Yep.
also was super panicky, and my parents were also like treating it like it was an inconvenience. Like the
Mine
night.
just like, it was just like brushed under the rug, like, oh, that doesn't exist.
Right, right. I mean, love our parents. Look,
Yeah.
it's fine. We all are from a different time or whatever. But yeah, kids in the 90s, we had a very different way of dealing with our emotions, which was
Yeah.
fun dealing with them and pretending
And
like they don't exist.
yeah. Well, I think like we've just started to place an emphasis on mental health, like towards like not even in the early 2000s. Like it's been a very recent development where we're looking at mental health as like, okay, this is a very important piece of like overall health and well-being.
Right.
And that just didn't exist yet in the 90s.
Yeah.
It definitely did not. And that's what I'm working on now too. So I'm like currently in the midst of becoming certified through Break Method, which is basically an intense 16-week emotional repatterning program. And even before you get into that, there's a 30-day self-study. So I'm being trained right now to lead that 30-day self-study. And it's like what I wish I had 10 years ago. It's a deep dive into like, okay, what are the little things, events, circumstances, whatever that went into chipping away at we all come in as like an uncarved block, and like, what are the things that chipped away? And like, I'll just talk about this briefly, but one of the things that really stuck with me was I was in first grade and I was like, we each took turns bringing home this bear and this book and journal. And like every weekend it would go home with a different student. So like one weekend it was my turn. And now I'm a very small person as an adult. I'm like 5'2", 112 pounds, like very small person. And so I was a very small little kid as well. So like I have my backpack with all of my school books in it. Cause like you have to bring, in the 90s, we had to bring everything home for the weekend. And it's like, it's so crazy to think about.
It's illegal now to have a backpack full of books in it.
Yeah. Now they just have like an iPad or whatever.
Right.
So like had my backpack with like all of my shit in it and lunch bag. And then now I have this bag with the bear and like all of the stupid bear stuff. So it's like a canvas bag and I'm kind of like dragging it behind me, like get into class. I'm like out of breath, like this little person carrying these 3 huge bags. And the first like 20 minutes of class, the teacher just like berates me in front of the entire class about like, why would I ever drag this canvas bag along the floor, because now the canvas bag is dirty and like, how dare I, like basically. And I remember the teacher like literally getting the bottom of the bag and shoving it in my face, like in front of the entire class of like, I mean, this is back in the 90s. So there was probably like 30 kids in the class. Right. Like shoving the bag in my face, being like, it's dirty. And like, why would you do this? And like, that is something that I didn't even realize, like patterned me in some way to like feel, that was like the first time I felt shame. Right.
Publish. That's big.
Yeah. So it's like uncovering all of these little things to be like, okay, how do I still respond to that moment as an adult through like other interactions? Holy shit. Like, so the whole course is just like looking at things like this for 16 weeks and seeing how that triggers a certain response and how you can stop that response and create a new healthy pattern. So that's where my heart is, because I feel like we're really lacking in the mental health space. This is an unpopular opinion, but I think that therapy keeps people stuck. I think it's a good tool, but I don't think it should be the only tool. I mean, the whole premise, it's Western medicine. So the whole premise is repeat customers. So they're going to heal you just enough where you feel like you're making a change and you feel better, but they're not going to heal you enough where it's like, okay, I've repatterned this. I don't need this anymore. Like what's next? Like, so that is the space that I really want to be in. That's what I'm working on. So I'll be launching my first 30-day self-study group come January.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. This is such an awesome conversation, and I love and admire what you're doing. Like there's been a few people that I've had on that I kind of like fangirl over. You're definitely one of them.
Oh, thank you.
I love all the content you share. And actually like we have a lot of mutual friends, and that is how I found.
We have like 30 mutual friends.
I know. And you know what? I used to come to Laughing Elephant. So if you've taught there, like we've definitely like.
I taught at some unreasonable hour, like 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning or something like that, or Friday. But I did work at the front desk, so I likely checked you in multiple times and I don't remember.
Yeah.
When were you around there?
Probably like, so I went through my yoga teacher training in 2015. So probably like slightly before that, and like all the way up until they moved.
At Laughing Elephant, you did your teacher training?
No, I did it at Rafa.
Okay, I was like,
that's conversations for another day.
Oh, I know. It's no thing. Yeah, we crossed paths 18 times.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
It's funny when you're like vibrating at a similar frequency to someone and like you just come into their fields. Cause I feel like my friend Mary shared your stuff and I was like, how does Mary know her? And then
what's Mary's last name?
Massid.
Yes. How do you know Mary? Mary was like roommates with my sister. I basically lived with Mary.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
She just moved back also.
So no way.
She also
I haven't
moved
talked to
back.
her. Hopefully she's listening. I know she listens to some of the podcasts, so
Yes,
hopefully she listens
Mary.
to this and is like laughing her ass off. Um, I talk to her from time to time. We're like, she's like, I'm Gemini sun, she's Leo sun. So like we became instant friends once we met, but we also met through Jamie Gray, who I've mentioned on this podcast, like literally every fucking podcast, like
I used to work on
Jamie's
the
name
farm
come
with
up.
Jamie. I
Yeah,
used to work
so
with Jamie
she's
and
another person.
Mary on Moonrose Farm. We used to,
Yes.
yeah, all
Oh
work
my
on that
God.
farm.
So funny. What a small world.
I
So
know.
yeah, like a few of them have shared your things. And actually I think Katie has even taken some of your classes.
Yes, I've met
Um
Katie from Laughing Elephant. She actually told me about you.
oh my God, that's so funny.
She's
I'm
the one
pretty
that told me about you. She's like, "Do you know Giana? She shares all this stuff that we talk about." And I'm like, "I don't know. I gotta check her out." And that's how I think I fish. I think I might have been already following you at that point, but I think she had mentioned you then. But yes, there's a
so funny.
vortex here in Rhode Island that
Yeah.
does something. I don't know exactly what. Oh, I actually was gonna mention to you, or ask you about how's the healing community out there
So it's evolving. I think that
in Arizona, right? You're in.
yep, Arizona. So I split my time between we spend like 8-ish months in Arizona and then 4-ish months in Colorado. But here in Arizona, it's very interesting because this land is very interesting because it was indigenous land and then America took it over in like 1901 or something like that. So there's a lot of turmoil on this land. Like you can physically feel it when you get here. Especially when you're like out hiking and stuff. It's like you get like I don't even know what it is. Like your whole chakra system like locks the fuck up. You're like, okay, what happened on this land? You feel that there's been a lot of bloodshed here.
Mm.
With that said, when I first moved here 3 years ago, it was kind of like an underground community of people who were doing this stuff. And I think now it's starting to become more present. People are doing more work to heal the land. There's this woman and her husband who do these retreats. They're called like wild meat retreats, and they teach people how to hunt and how to be one with the land. So I think that there's a lot of like I feel like this is it's taking a step towards like what Rhode Island is. It's like I feel like Rhode Island is kind of like ahead of the curve. It's like where a lot of healers landed to do work by the ocean or whatever it is. Like I got called back to I lived away from Rhode Island before, and then got called back and did like some deep healing work for about 5 years before I moved back out here. Um, so yeah, I think it's like an evolving thing. And I think it's also that people are trying to navigate paying homage to the indigenous cultures here while not appropriating them. Because a lot of these healing practices did come from indigenous cultures. So it's like an evolving thing out here and it's very interesting to see where it's going and people are definitely starting to wake up like before when I first moved here it was basically like power yoga and that was it. Like that was the only thing that was out here. It was like yoga for fitness. But now you're starting to see more like meditation, sound healings, and things like that pop up, which I think is cool. Colorado is like completely the opposite. Like I landed in a space called True Nature Healing Arts. If you've never heard of it, look it up. Like you would probably love it. And I stumbled upon they're like they have a garden off of a bike path there that like the bike path is like over 42 miles long. It connects like several different towns. And I like see the sign that's like Peace Garden. And I was like, oh, I have to go check that out. And they grow all of their own herbs there. And like everything is permaculture. And it's some of the healthiest soil in the country.
What's this called again?
True Nature Healing Arts. And like they have so it's a yoga studio and a spa, and they have like a little cafe, and all of the teas in their cafe are from herbs that are grown right in their herb garden. And the the gardens are all free space. So anyone can go there, hang out, bring a blanket, like hang out all day. It has free Wi-Fi. So a lot of people like work from there if they work from home. And it is just like the most amazing healing space. And they are really like ahead of their time.
Mm.
They started in a 500 square foot space and now they own 4 properties that are all adjacent to one another that they've like created this huge healing center. And I like can't wait to get back there because like last summer I taught a bunch of yoga classes in their space and it's a new build out, but they brought in all of these artifacts from temples that some of their pieces are like 500 to 800 years old. It's like
Oh,
insane. And the people that work there are like, they're just on another level. Like everyone does healing work. They all have like their little niche and it's just come together beautifully in this like amazing space that's just like out of this world. If anyone is doing like a in America tour, like go there, spend time there. It's just like there's nothing. I've taught yoga all over the country pretty much at this point. There's no place that exists like this place. It's unbelievable.
my God, I want to move there now. I'm just like, okay, I guess that's where I gotta go.
They would love you. Like what you like, they would love you. You would have events there. Like it would be amazing.
Oh my God, I love that. If we don't have that stuff around here, like Soul Sanctuary just opened.
Yep.
That's what we got. We
Yep.
just started. That's like
So
the
I know
first.
Justine too.
Of course you do.
Yeah, she's in the so like Jamie is the spider that like connects this whole web.
Yes, apparently she knows everybody.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been such a fun conversation. If somebody wants to work with you, what are your offerings? Where can they find you?
So you can find me on my website, which is tfortorie.com. Or you can check out some of my recipes on Instagram, which is at tfortorie. And I have a Mod Podge of services. I do corporate virtual wellness classes where we do herbal mocktail and cocktail classes. I do consulting for either bars or restaurants, liquor stores, or just new businesses who either want to incorporate a non alcoholic menu or want to have non-alcoholic inventory in your shop. Again, it doesn't have to be limited to a liquor store because this is going above and beyond that. Some shops who just want to maybe have some stuff, I can recommend products depending on what your theme is. And then I do some consultations, not all the time, depending on what my project schedule is like, but I do herbal consultations and astrology as well. So I do a little bit of everything. I also have a monthly virtual mocktail class that I teach on Eventbrite, and that's on my Instagram page. I always talk about that. That's linked there and on my website, and that's a fun way to just get your feet wet in herbalism and in mocktails. So I'm doing actually a dry January class.
Oh, I
The
love
first
that.
week of January. Yep, first week of January, and we're going to be making an herbal uh, mulled wine. So we're going to
Ooh.
use a non-alcoholic wine and then infuse it with some functional herbs and then some of those like classic mulling spices like cinnamon and clove and stuff like that. And I always give people, I like to nerd out. I actually have a Gemini moon, so I love talking and learning and teaching people. So there's definitely a learning component. I try to make it interactive, but also have some great takeaways for people to learn about herbs and incorporate them in their daily life. And I do pop-ups in person. I'm doing so much right now. I don't even know how. I'm taking a vacation. I'm actually going to New Mexico for 2 weeks in January.
Oh, you'll be right next door.
Next door. And yeah, and I do some pop-ups. So if there's anybody who listens to this who is maybe in the New England area or maybe somewhere I'm traveling who would love to have me do a mocktail class at their space, I also teach those classes. So that's a little bit of what I do.
That's so awesome. I'm so excited to share with everyone because I think this conversation has been popping up with more and more friends who are kind of like not completely going sober or dry, but like just wanting other options and definitely not drinking every day. So this is like just a fun way to like still feel like you're having a treat, but like you're actually doing something really good for your body.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Anytime. Anytime. You're always welcome here. This was the Nearly Enlightened podcast. If you liked this episode, please give us a thumbs up, like, subscribe, and share. And I will talk to you next week.